France has had a bad rep on the African continent for quite a while.
Le drame de l'Afrique, c'est que l'homme africain n'est pas assez entré dans l'histoire.
L'Afrique, elle a besoin de nous pour prévenir les conflits et les massacres. L'Afrique, elle a également besoin de nous pour son développement.
And this has a lot to do, of course, with the country's long-standing posturing towards its former colonies, what many consider to be an ongoing corrupt system that enables the exploitation of African resources and assets at the expense of African nations and their people. But it's safe to say that France's President Emmanuel Macron has single-handedly worsened France's image in Africa since he's been in office. Just this week, the French leader managed to ring in the new year with a fresh diplomatic crisis after he said this.
Non, la France n'est pas en recul en Afrique. Elle est simplement lucide, elle se réorganise. Notre engagement contre le terrorisme depuis 2013, on avait raison. Je crois qu'on a oublié de nous dire merci. Et je le dis pour tous les gouvernants africains qui n'ont pas eu le courage vis-à-vis de leurs opinions publiques de le porter, aucun d'entre eux ne serait aujourd'hui avec un pays souverain si l'armée française ne s'était pas déployée dans cette région.
Unsurprisingly, the president of Senegal, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, and that of Chad, Mahamat Idriss Déby, who had both recently announced the withdrawal of all French troops from their country's soil in an effort to consolidate their national sovereignty, didn't take too kindly to Macron's comments. France has neither the capacity nor the legitimacy to guarantee Africa's security and sovereignty. If African soldiers, sometimes forcibly mobilized, mistreated, and ultimately betrayed, had not been deployed during the Second World War to defend France, France would perhaps still be Germany today. Idriss Déby, on his part, expressed his indignation at the remarks, which border on contempt for Africa and Africans, in a speech broadcast on Tuesday on national television. But this event doesn't even begin to cover the extent of the offensive remarks and attitudes the French leader has had towards Africans during his 2 terms. These have ranged from a dubious joke about then Burkina Faso President Roch-Marc Christian Kaboré going to fix the air conditioning while on a visit to Ouagadougou back in 2017, to the post-summit in January 2020, when Macron literally summoned several Sahel heads of states to France, prompting outrage amongst Africans who have demanded that he stop addressing the continent's leaders as if they were children. Not to mention the way that Macron has been talking about African women, saying, I quote, "When countries still have 7 or 8 children per woman, you can decide to spend billions of euros, but you won't stabilize anything." These words have all come from a president who, when he was running for office, repeatedly vowed to change the discourse about and towards Africa and to create a partnership on equal footing. On a visit to Algeria in February 2017, Macron made history by acknowledging that colonization was a crime against humanity. He added, "It is part of France's past that we must face head on by apologizing to those towards whom we've committed these acts." So we went from this type of groundbreaking acknowledgement to a statement akin to Africans should be thanking us for all that we've done for them. Exactly. But beyond the condescension and disdain in his remarks, Macron seemed to want to regain control of a widespread and growing narrative that France, especially in its military and political form, is no longer wanted on the African continent. He indeed claimed that France chose to reimagine and reorganize its presence on the African continent, and particularly in West Africa, for pragmatic and values-driven reasons. He specifically said that France left the Sahel region to stand on its principle of not supporting putschist leaders. Yes, West Africa has indeed seen a series of coups d'etat since 2020, but making this the reason for the departure of French forces is at the very least disingenuous. After all, Emmanuel Macron was the first leader to endorse Mahamat Idriss Déby's putsch in Chad in April 2021. Fast forward to November 2024, when Chad's announcement of an ending in the military cooperation between the 2 countries reportedly came as a surprise and a shock in Paris. Even Emmanuel Macron's special envoy for Africa, Jean-Marie Bockel, had to admit that France was not expecting the announcement, as reported by the investigative outlet Mediapart. Ultimately, the war of communication and narratives is far from over, as France's top man seems determined to continue rewriting history with a hint of racism and his usual paternalistic tone. I will end this video with a quote from another French president whose perspective was drastically different and simply more insightful. In an interview given at the end of his term in 2007, Jacques Chirac put things this way. He said, "We're just forgetting one thing. It's that a large part of the money in our coffers comes from the exploitation of Africa over centuries. Not only Africa, but a lot of it comes from the exploitation of Africa. So we need to have a little common sense. I'm not talking about generosity. I'm talking about common sense, justice, to give back to Africans what has been taken from them, especially as this is necessary if we want to avoid the worst convulsions or difficulties with the political consequences that this might entail in the future. We'd love to know what you think about all of this, Macron's remarks, the reactions on the African continent, and this analysis, of course. So please engage with us in the comments, and we are so happy to be back with you. We wish you a happy new year, happy 2025. Stay informed this year and stay empowered.